We are live back with a Thursday edition of Your Wildest Fantasy Football Show. Cody, how are we feeling? Are we excited for Thursday night football? Atlanta Falcons, New England Patriots.
I think this has the potential to be the best football game of the year.
I think you're being sarcastic, but I do not know.
I mean, every game has the potential. I'm just stating that this one in particular has the potential.
Okay.
You never know what's going to happen.
Did you say what's going to happen?
Yeah, you never know what's going to happen.
You never do know. Although we try to predict it every 4 days of the week.
That is true.
Before that happens, I think we have to solve something that we didn't solve on Tuesday. So on Monday, we had a bit of a disagreement, and I want to come out early and I don't know if probably apologize for my actions. I spoke a little bit out of turn. I think I did call Cody a disgrace of a human being on Monday for not sorry, this internet situation is still not figured out. It will be figured out by next week, I promise. Or it won't be. I don't know if I have control of it. If I have control of it, it will be. For choosing Chipotle over Moe's. And while I do not regret my decision to speak out very strongly against that choice, which is, I think, the wrong choice, I do regret the language I used in saying that. Because, Cody, you're not a disgrace of a human being, I wouldn't say. I would say, like, maybe a little bit disappointing in some of your choices, especially when it comes to Tex-Mex food chains. But I don't think that makes it fair for me to express my disgust in that kind of way. So I do apologize for that. I apologized earlier, but we never got your answer on whether you accepted my apology or not.
I will accept your apology, Kondo. I understand people get all salty about their food. You know, it happens. It happens to the best of us. I just think we use this as a building block for our relationship, further down the line.
What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. And though Chipotle has been known to have an E. coli problem, and I think that might be able to kill you. Hasn't killed either of us yet. And I think that just goes to prove the point even further. So.
Right. I mean, it is what it is.
With that said, I think it's time to get to our Thursday night football game between the New England Patriots and Atlanta Falcons. New England is big favorite in this game, 6.5 points. Obviously, they've been on hot streak of late, a very big hot streak of late, just dominating in their last two games.
Right.
I guess before we get into our expectations for this game, we can talk about some of the injury news. Both running back situations kind of up in the air. One a little bit more certain now. Damian Harris off the injury list. All signs point towards him playing tonight, returning after Ramondre Stevenson having a monster week last week. What are your expectations for how the backfield is going to play out, even though we've kind of talked about this before? Pretty impossible to predict what Belichick is going to do. But if you were to predict what Bill Belichick is going to do, what would it be?
I think he's going to lean on Damian Harris. I think we've seen that throughout the year. Damian Harris is the more consistent back for them. When given the touches, he seems to produce at a higher volume than any other back they have back there. I mean, against Dallas, he went 18 for 101 and a touchdown. Against the Jets, 14 for 106 and 2 touchdowns. I think he is the better running back there in New England. As in terms of like actually running the ball, I think he's the better of the two backs. Stevenson has a lot of promising upside, and he's obviously been able to deliver some good weeks when given like the full workload. But I think with Harris back, Harris is the guy that I'm more encouraged in watching this game.
Yeah, Harris is definitely going to be the lead back. Don't be starting Ramondre Stevenson, expecting him to, I think, just do exactly what he did last week. I think that's something we can both
Mhm.
agree on.
Right.
It's hard to say that they're not going to involve Stevenson more after the week he posted and just after how he's played. Like, he's played really well this season, so he's going to be on the field. I think we can expect or hope that he sees the field because of what he's able to do when he's on it. Just don't expect him to be the lead guy. If you're starting anybody in this backfield, it is going to be Damian Harris. On
Right.
the other side of the ball, Cordero Patterson, game time decision. They said he has been very limited in practice so far, and it would be pretty surprising if he was able to go tonight.
Mhm.
Now, that is more complicated after last week because before last week, we would have said, oh, Mike Davis, easy. Well, last week we saw Wayne Gallman work into the fold a bit.
We
Mike
did.
Davis was 4 of 18 rushing on 37% of the snaps. Wayne Gallman 15 for 55 with 43% of the snaps. Not good for either guy, but Gallman did have more snaps, albeit in a blowout loss
Right.
to Dallas last week. It's hard to say whether that's going to be a role. I imagine if Cordero is out, both guys are going to get their opportunity. I don't think Mike Davis is the clear starter here, but if they have the backfield to themselves, or if it's just Mike Davis and Wayne Gallman, like
Mhm.
you probably should like feel okay starting one of them, right? Like,
Right. Yeah. So I think Cordell Patterson isn't going to play. Um, I think more of a precaution thing, just because he has been limited, um, and he's been their most explosive player out there all year, fantasy and otherwise. So I think they're going to give him a week off. Atlanta not exactly in the hunt to win the Super Bowl this year. So I think they just give him a rest. I feel more confident in Gallman than I do Mike Davis, just because I think we haven't really seen much productivity out of Davis. Like we saw, like those double digits in PPR the first 5 weeks, but then since the bye, four or three out of the last four have all been below 3 points. So it's not looking like he's trending in the upward right now. Whereas I think Gallman like poised a good week last week, and I think if Cordell Patterson misses this game, I think that Gallman would be the best guy to start out of the other two.
I'm going to go in the other direction here. I do think
Mhm.
that it's Mike Davis. Now, we're not saying that either of these guys are going to have monster days. We're saying
No.
that they're starting running backs. So you're considering playing them just
Right.
because of that. I think he's a safer option to get you 10 points because even though like we did see Gallman get more work last week and Mike Davis didn't get much work at all, he still was like quick math on this 4.5 yards a carry, had a little bit more efficiency than Mike Davis or than Wayne Gallman did. And I could see this being like heavy Mike Davis and not much Wayne Gallman, or
Mhm.
I could see it being Davis and Gallman. I can't see it all Wayne Gallman.
I can't see it being all Wayne Gallman, um, but I just think that Davis, like he is capable of getting you double digits in full point leagues, um, but he just hasn't been as of late. That's just why I think Gallman would be he'd be the dart throw I'm willing to take if I'm going to take a Mike Davis or a Wayne Gallman. I'm going to ride with Gallman. I don't think either of them are going to give you a top 20 running back for the week. I think Patterson is the only back there who will do that on a weekly basis for you. But I mean, New England has been a little soft against the run this year, so that kind of gives me a little bit of hope for both of them to like potentially get close to 10, if not 11 to 12.
Yeah, I think you're hoping just for if you are in the situation where you're playing either of these guys, you're just sitting there hoping for a 10-point week that's not going to ruin you for the weekend.
Exactly.
And I think it's preference on whoever one of these guys you are going to go with. I say Mike Davis, you Wayne Gallman. I want to get back to Ramondre Stevenson real quick because you said that Harris is going to be the guy here. Does that mean you're just not playing Ramondre Stevenson at all? Or would you consider playing him even if it is for that smaller role as the number 2 in New England?
They're playing Atlanta. That's like the only reason I'm thinking about it. We haven't, I don't know if we've seen so far this year them both go off. I mean, week 6, I believe Damian Harris was active, correct? Or no? Week 6, he was active. They both had a good week. Week 9, they were both active. Stevenson beat him out. And obviously, week 10, Harris didn't play, so he beat him out. But the rest of the time, Harris, that they both played together, Harris is the guy getting the majority of the looks, getting the majority of the touches, and performing better fantasy-wise. So I don't think Stevenson, I'm not loving it, but you can start him if you're in like a deeper league and you need a guy to fill in this week, just because it is Atlanta, and Atlanta has just been so horrendous against running backs and really anyone this year.
Yeah, I think you're starting whoever your preference is between Mike Davis and Wayne Gallman over Stevenson, I would say.
Yeah.
But I guess it depends what you need. Like, I think that Ramondre Stevenson could be more of a ceiling guy. He could have a higher opportunity to get a touchdown than a Mike Davis or Wayne Gallman. But I think that Wayne Gallman or Mike Davis have a better opportunity to see the floor. And in my opinion, Mike Davis has a better opportunity to see a 10-point floor than Ramondre Stevenson, whom you only see like 7 touches in the game. I think that whichever Atlanta running back you're going with will have more touches. So if you think that Ramondre Stevenson is explosive enough to defy the rule of like more touches equals more points, then go for it. But I think he's a pretty risky flex, and I would probably try to avoid starting him.
I'm with you.
Atlanta is allowing the 7th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. We've seen kind of all these wide receivers have their day. Kendrick Bourne was a popular waiver guy this past week. Are there any wide receivers you trust here, or are you waiting for the weekend?
It's tough. I think you can start Myers and Bourne as a flex, risky flex, but I still think you can do it. Atlanta is soft against the pass this year. They're soft against everything this year. And I really think Myers and Bourne are both guys who have the potential to catch, 7 or 8 balls for 50, 60 yards and get you double digits, I think this is a game that you could start both these guys. Myers finally got his first touchdown of the season last week, so they could potentially look to him to try to score a couple more. Just now that he's in, might just keep feeding him. And we just saw Bourne just get a bunch of targets. So I like both of those guys in deeper leagues. Not 10 team obviously, but 12 team, 14 team, absolutely.
Yeah, I think they're pretty risky. I would try to stay away if you can, but if that's the road you have to go down and it's like those guys, like a Kendrick Bourne versus I would even say versus like a Chase Claypool. I might even pull the trigger on that. But it's a tough call.
Are you going Allen Robinson or either of New England?
I think I'm going both New England guys. Allen Robinson might not even play, but
All right.
even if
What
Allen
about
Robinson is healthy,
Kenny Galladay? Kenny Galladay is playing Tampa Bay Monday night.
I'm probably, depending on the health of the other Giants wide receivers and Kenny Galladay.
Kenny Galladay
I think
has
I would lean
nothing
Galladay,
questionable. Galladay has nothing
but
questionable on his name.
it's tough. I mean, has not really done anything this year besides one game, but I would probably lean Galladay just because of the upside of it's Kenny Galladay.
Are you going Sanders or either of the New England back or wideouts?
I think so. I think I'm leaning Emmanuel Sanders. I'm not feeling great about it, but those are all tough calls.
Michael Gallup is the last one.
That's interesting. KC, I would go Gallup.
Okay. Interesting. I think I would go Myers over almost everyone but Sanders. I think Sanders and Myers are kind of close in terms of Buffalo's playing Indy and New England's playing Atlanta. So both weak pass defenses both have an opportunity this week. So it's tough. Those are the only two close ones for me. The rest of them, I think I'm going with at least Myers, if not Bourne, for most of these other guys.
Moving on into the weekend, starting with New Orleans at Philadelphia. This is a big game, also with a lot of running back question marks. It seems like Alvin Kamara is getting more prepared to be able to play this week. He was seen at practice yesterday. Miles Sanders also coming off of IR. Not sure if he is going to be ready for the weekend or not at this point. But Philly, crazy stat that I found, is first in rushing yards in the NFL over the last 3 games since Miles Sanders has been out, with 208 rushing yards per game. 208.7. And for the sake of what I'm about to say, I'm going to round up to 209. New England is second with 159. So that's almost a 50-yard gap between first and second place, which is just kind of wild. What do we expect in this Miles Sanders return, if he is to return as the starter versus New Orleans, who's kind of on the counterbalance this, is bottom 3 in fantasy points allowed?
I think it's going to be tough. We've seen Jalen Hurts run for 60, 70 yards these past 4 weeks when Sanders has been out. They kind of push them, they get you above that 50 of New England where Mac Jones doesn't really run the ball. It's going to be tough. I definitely think it's a risky play to start Sanders this week. Saints are tough against the run, coming back from IR. Not ideal. I think I'd look for someone else just to play a little bit safer than Sanders. I'm not sure if I'd go Howard or Scott just because I think Sanders will get the majority of those looks. I just don't think he'll deliver like we know he can.
Yeah, I'm starting Sanders if I have him, just because in comparison to other options, I'm just not sure who else you would have that's better.
He only has 2 weeks above double digits. He went 17 against Atlanta, and then against San Francisco, Dallas, Carolina, and Tampa Bay, and Las Vegas, he all has under 10. The only games he has above is against Atlanta and Carolina. And I think you can find better guys. Like we were talking for Mike Davis earlier. Mike Davis has more games above double digits than Sanders does. I'd feel more comfortable Mike Davis back there, even if I think Wayne Gallman's going to get more of the opportunity and perform better, I think that the guy who has gotten double digits more is the safer option than the guy who's got it 2 times out of 7 weeks or 6 weeks, whatever.
I'm not going that far on it. I would rather have Miles.
You rather have the guy that went 2 for 7? That makes sense.
Okay. I would. If I can give my argument for a second.
You were
I just
breaking
wanted
up.
to say. I just let a pause out to see if I was allowed to. I think you look at Mike Davis to Miles Sanders. If we want to just eye test it here for a second, Miles Sanders is the more talented running back. I think that's a pretty clear thing. I think he's in an offense that he's going to see more touches, I think, than Mike Davis does. I get that he's facing off against a tougher defense in New Orleans, but I just think the upside for Miles Sanders is 20 carries and like 100 yards and touchdown, because he's that good of a player. There's a reason that going into the season, he was a top 20 running back. And there's a reason through the first, 7 weeks of the season that he played, people were saying, why are we not giving the ball to Miles Sanders? People were not saying that about Mike Davis. I think in that regard, I just trust the talent with Miles Sanders and the opportunity with Miles Sanders more than I trust it for Mike Davis. And even more than I trust it with people that maybe I shouldn't trust it with. But I mean, I've kind of always been a believer in the talent of Miles Sanders, and that when given the opportunity, he can be a very talented running back. So I like his upside there, and I think he's going to get the carries, if healthy, to be able to not have a terrible, terrible week either.
So Miles Sanders has gotten 60% or better of the snaps in 6 out of the 7 games that he played. Miles Sanders in those weeks has 2 weeks above double digits fantasy points.
Yes, you've said that.
Might be right. I'm just reiterating it because you like to use, how people are performing as fantasy numbers go.
Well, I think sometimes it's important, but when we talk about how this team has changed over the last 3 weeks,
but they're playing New Orleans.
Yeah. But do you think they're going to change the identity of the team to be like a pass happy team now? I think they've seen that the running opportunity is working for them, that the running game is how they're going to be able to win games. And I don't think they go away with that with their top running back coming back and just leave him out. I could see Jordan Howard getting involved and taking a touchdown, which is going to piss people off. But I still see him getting a lot more work than he was getting in those first 7 weeks when they were not relying on the run as much as I think we all said they should be.
He had a 66, 67, 60, 64, 75, 83% share those first 6 games when he was fully healthy.
Mm-hmm.
The game he had 83% of the snaps played going to him. He gave you he gave you 8.6 fantasy points.
We're arguing different things.
I'm arguing that I think Mike Davis is the safer option, and I think Mike Davis is going to perform better than a guy who is coming off of IR, has 2 double-digit fantasy weeks the entire time, and is going to play against New Orleans, one of the better running.
Well, you're not hearing.
I heard your argument. You said that he has an opportunity to go for 20 carries when his best carries was 15 week 1.
But what were we saying the entire time that we were in this stretch where Miles Sanders was not getting any carries? From week 3 to week 7, he did not eclipse 12 carries. We were saying he has to get the ball more. He has to get more touches. In week 8 to week 10, they have made running the ball a priority, not only with Jalen Hurts, but with the running backs as well, and less talented running backs. So I feel like the expectation here is that when they get Miles Sanders back, he is going to run the ball more than 12 times. Now, that might be an expectation that we haven't seen since week 2 of the season. I feel like that's something that, seeing how they have played over the last 3 weeks and seeing how they have changed their offense, we would expect to see, since it has helped them win and help them compete. Like, they almost beat the Chargers.
I think you're putting too much like emphasis on or not emphasis. You're putting too much like hope and stuff into a guy who, like, if you look back these past 3 weeks, no one has above a 45% share. And if you look back against last week, it was 31, 31, 38 for the snap split. Like, they're splitting up the backfield, and that's what's kind of helping them by having fresh guys in there. So I don't think Miles Sanders coming back, I don't think it would, if they do what you say they're going to do and continue to run it, then they would continue to run it with 3 guys plus Jalen Hurts back there running it for 70 yards a game, which would be 4 guys running it without Sanders even touching the ball. Now we throw Sanders in there. Someone has to come out of that 3-man rotation that they've been using. I don't think he gets all these targets that you're like thinking he's going to get, and that we haven't seen him get since week 2. That's why I'm way more skeptical that that Sanders is going to have this like monster day. I
don't think he's going to have a monster day. I just think he's going to have a better day than Mike Davis. And I think that's a big difference that I do want to put out there to the people.
Mm-hmm. I think Mike Davis scores more than Sanders this week.
All right, I'll make that bet.
Okay.
Do we want to make that? I feel like we should factor our weekly bets into our bold prediction points.
No, those are 2 separate things. Bold predictions,
well,
and then
I don't remember any of the points. I
write it down. I write it down.
Do you?
Sometimes, if you remind me.
Well, I've never reminded you. So
no, last week I did it. What did we put down?
I'm very curious.
Said, oh, hold on, where'd it go? I'm looking.
Oh boy. Well, in the meantime,
yeah, we had the OBJ one. I mean, I was just rest of season. I have to go back another week, but it just takes too long.
OBJ wide receiver 1.
Actually, it was OBJ wide receiver 2 rest of season from week 10 on was the bet that I made with you, and I think second take extra.
Okay. I think you said wide receiver 1 at one point. I know you did say wide receiver 1 at one point, but
I said if Robert Woods can finish as a wide receiver 1, then I think OBJ has more talent and he's going to finish wide receiver 1. That's why I said, but I said rest of season wide receiver 2 OBJ. That's why I said.
Okay. We have to move on. Miami at the Jets. As put in the title here, it's a Gaskin big game. Jets giving up 5 more rushing touchdowns than any other team in the NFL.
Right.
I mean, he's projected for a ton, and I think he's going to get there. Not as much because of the Jets, like kind of because of the Jets, but also because it's not a beat, and that's what he does.
Exactly. I mean, great day for Gaskins. He's going to look good out there. It's going to be a nice bounce back from the 4 points he got last week or whatever he got. That was pitiful. Are you starting? I said I'm starting 1 at every position for Miami. Are you with me or against me here?
I didn't hear it. I cut out.
Oh, I said I'm starting 1 at every position for Miami. Are you with me or against me on this one? I'm starting Tua in a deeper league, starting Gaskins, Waddle, and Gesicki. I think all those guys are someone that need to be started this week.
I'm starting Tua as a stream option. If you need a quarterback, I'm not sitting him over or not starting him. I'm not sure I'm even starting him over like a Herbert or anything, but I'd play him in a situation where I need a quarterback. I'm starting Gaskin, starting Waddle for sure. And yeah, you got to start Gesicki even after a rough week. He still got 7 targets. Exactly. I'm not too worried about him. On the other side of the ball, Flacco is going to be the starter. And the question now is with the Jets, does having an elite quarterback change any of the expectations you have for this offense?
I don't know. It's the Jets organization, so like that's not like a helpful thing. You have Carter, who has been performing well as of late. So I think that having granted is a Michael Carter in the Jets organization running game, but I still think having a little bit of a running game helps you. Joe Flacco is an accurate quarterback. I think if given like time, he can make a couple short pass. You okay there? You getting rated?
My eyes are so itchy, and I feel like it looks like I'm crying, and I
You
don't know what's going on.
it does look like you're crying. So
It
I'm gonna
does. I don't know how to change that.
yeah, maybe just cry real quick and then or have
I
something to
don't know. I
compare
mean,
it
I'm
to.
just it's pretty exciting, emotional day whenever Joe Flacco, we find out we get to talk about him as the starting quarterback, but yeah. I don't know. Sorry to interrupt with just
Yeah.
my visuals, but
I mean, it's definitely going to be an interesting day for sure. Um, a question for you. I said, who are you starting for the wide receiver core?
I'm starting Elijah Moore, and that's it. Uh, yeah, I
Not
mean,
starting Corey Davis?
no, Corey Davis, I thought he might be a start just because obviously he had a big day, a lot of kind of the garbage time yards. But when Flacco was in, Moore was the only guy who saw multiple targets. I don't really know that there's anything that's like too predictive from this offense other than Elijah Moore is probably the most talented receiving option here. So I think it's just Elijah Moore and Carter. And if Corey Davis proves me wrong on my bench, I'm fine with that. And I
Mhm.
will consider starting him next week.
Yeah, I'm with you. What I think it's going to be a better real day than I think it's going to be a fancy day for some of these guys, and going to stay away from most of the Jets.
The Miami defense is going around too. So we need to like put some respect on their name as well. And we'll see what this Jets offense is able to do against a defense that just kind of shut down a really good team in the Ravens. Going to Washington at Carolina, the Cam game. That's the big thing here. Cam expected to make his first start for, well, not first start for Carolina, but first start back in Carolina. Why you said that he should be a streaming option.
Mhm.
I liked the idea of Cam back in this offense for some of the other options,
Yep.
particularly in the passing game.
Right.
But I'm a little scared for this week. What is your argument for like why he should be a streamer? Because I think I could still be pulled in one direction or the other.
Mhm. I mean, you're playing Washington dead last in terms of points to the quarterback. So if there's a game to come back, it's Washington. Quite literally, worst team in terms of fantasy points allowed to the quarterback. Cam Newton. Um, we will see if his accuracy has improved from last year earlier on. If it has, and he's in for a good day. You have DJ Moore, one fantastic wide receiver out there. You have Robbie Anderson, who we saw a slight revival in last game, and you have CMC. So you have three options to throw to. You have, Tremble, your ride or die tight end that you were just so high on. 30-point days to come for Tommy Tremble was what you said.
Didn't
Uh,
say any of that.
I heard it. Heard 30-point days for Tommy Tremble, and I don't know. He has options, and I think Cam is obviously still Cam Newton. Um, love him or hate him, but is also going to run the ball probably 10 times. So he'll get you some fancy points on the ground. He has he has some elite weapons to toss the ball to and let them do their thing, and to get some free give me yards and fancy points for you that way. I like it. Definitely worse options to start this week.
Fair. Yeah, I am a little bit worried about the I'm a little bit worried about the Washington defense, more so just because of the relationship there. I think it's a kind of a dumb thing to worry about, to be honest, but there might be something to Ron Rivera knowing Cam better than anybody else and just
Right.
seeing him day in and day out for years.
Mhm.
I don't really care of like that he said he had plays for him ready at the press conference. I would just expect a guy who's seen Cam Newton play football as much as anybody
Right.
be able to know what he's good at and what he's not good at. And we saw this defense have a little bit of a revival last week against Tampa Bay, limited Tom Brady to what did he have, like 13 fantasy points. Yeah, 13. So seeing a little bit of a revival from this team, a little bit. I don't know if that's like as much of a thing for me, but like it's a streaming kind of situation, and
Mhm.
if you get a guy like Tua, I think I would rather have Tua um,
Tua is
out
ranked number.
there. What was that?
I said Tua is ranked number 6 on the week, so I think most people would rather have Tua than
But he's only
Cam.
rostered in 42% of leagues, so he's still
I can't
out
help
there
it that I can't help it.
in a good chunk. Obviously, my guy Justin Fields would be somebody that I would think about as well on a hot streak. Yeah, I think there's some other options that I would lean towards. Even Jimmy Garoppolo has been just like pretty good of late. Maybe a better regular quarterback than fantasy quarterback, but they do play Jacksonville. Jacksonville's been good again on defense, though, too. So I don't know. Those are a couple guys that I would look to
So just a
over Cam this
question.
week, but I don't think
Yeah.
Cam's bad
So
for
just a
like
question, Kondo. You mentioned someone by the name of Justin Fields.
yep.
Earlier in the show, I did ask you if you'd rather start the New England wideouts or Allen Robinson. You said Allen Robinson might not play, which is fair. Mooney might not play also. So with two of your best weapons out there, or not out there, actually, quite literally just gone, not out there playing for you. Um, David Montgomery coming back. Um, I think fully now. He had the bye week, so I think fully at this point. I don't know. I know quarterbacks kind of need to throw the ball to people to get a lot of fantasy points. Just kind of how the cookie crumbles here. I don't know how you expect Justin Fields to throw to no one and yet outperform Cam Newton, who I think we both agree has better weapons on Carolina's team than on Chicago, with CMC trumping Dave Montgomery and DJ Moore trumping both of the wideouts in Chicago. I just want to know like where you got your bold take. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, first off, a Wednesday practice limited for Darnell Mooney. I'm not as worried about that as you are. I actually think it could be a good day to start Mooney as a risky flex. I'm
Being
not.
ninth against
What was that?
the pass this year.
Okay. I mean, I'm not too worried about ninth. Um,
Yeah.
I also think just the running, like the running is also something you could say with Cam, but I think that I'm
Yes.
not. I mean, I'm trusting a guy that I've seen more of late,
Mhm.
and it's Justin Fields, and he's not going against this coach that knows a lot about him. Like, I think that is playing into my head a little bit more. Now, I don't think that Cam is going to be like. I don't think Fields is going to be head and shoulders above Cam, but
Mhm.
I feel more confident starting him. I do think Montgomery being back actually helps them because I think having the running game is going to help that offense move a lot better and take some of the pressure off of him with his legs. But I'm fine with Mooney out there. I think Cole Kmet, obviously, we saw him have a good week. following or previous to the bye. So I feel better about him as a receiving option too. I'm not as worried about Allen Robinson being hurt because Allen Robinson hasn't done much in general when he was out there or whether he hasn't been.
Fair enough. All right. We can talk about Washington now.
Yeah. For Washington, we kind of talked about Antonio Gibson earlier in the week, saying it's probably a sell high guy at this point because of the efficiency. And now he goes up against Carolina, who is pretty good against the run. How do we feel about starting Antonio Gibson this week?
Not loving it. I said I'm not starting anyone from Washington with a good, solid trust in my system. Scary Terry, his nickname is Scary. So I think you can sway yourself if he is not your number one guy to find a better backup guy for the week. Carolina is a very good defense this year. I think they're just going to find a way to shut down your number one option, and especially if Gibson is not going to participate. I think he will, but in a limited part when he plays, just because it's the shin again. If you're just going to keep having an issue, eventually it's going to slow you down. So I think just having it just be a one-man show out there in Scary Terry makes it kind of predictable on what to do as far as the defense goes. Just double Scary Terry, and you should be good to go. So that's just why I'm not super ecstatic about starting any of these guys. You probably are, which is fair. I'd love to hear an argument for it, but I'm just not really into starting any of these people this week. I think you can find better options across the board.
There's a lot of shrapnel coming my way.
I said you're probably not going to agree.
Dipping, ducking, and dodging, trying to get out of the way of the freaking shots getting fired at me.
By saying you might have a different opinion than me? I'm giving you credit.
I feel like I'm in the firing line. So many times I'm just getting hit with just objects left and right, trying to dip, duck, dodge, and dodge or whatever.
I think you should I think the less you move, the better your camera looks. So you gotta stay in that one little frame. Because every time you start moving,
you're throwing shots at my camera. So that's even more. We're going outside of fantasy football now, and it's getting personal.
I'm trying to help.
Shot at my fantasy football takes, that's one thing. You take a shot at my camera, I think we're close to a line.
I think there is a line right now, like right here, right.
It's a line?
Right on the TV or the computer or the phone, whatever you're watching us on, that separate our two screens.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, well, you're almost crossing into mine, and I don't appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, I don't feel great about Terry McLaurin. Like, they have Stephon Gilmore. I don't feel great about anybody going against Stephon Gilmore, especially like when you like what you said when like this offense is pretty predictable. It's just run the ball inefficiently with Antonio Gibson or throw the ball to Terry McLaurin. That's about it. Like, you got to hope, I think for Terry McLaurin's sake, you hope that Logan Thomas going to get out there and just take some of the attention away. You hope that Antonio Gibson can look good. I'm starting him because, I mean, we talk about the injuries slowing him down, but like he had 26 touches last week. If anybody has 26 touches, I'm starting them. And if anybody is kind of in line to be like a starting running back, like at this point, I'm starting them. So I think a really good question that I don't know if I would be able to answer is Miles Sanders versus Antonio Gibson. But I'm starting Antonio Gibson in most cases.
Yeah,
I'm not feeling great about it, but I'm not
feeling. I don't feel good about starting any of these guys. I think on a case by case basis, you can start a Scary Terry or a Gibson, and hopefully it pays off for you. I'm just not going to take that risk in any of my leagues.
Would you rather start like an Emmanuel Sanders over Terry McLaurin?
I think this week I do. I mean, Emmanuel Sanders is playing the Colts, much easier passing game. You're not the number one option, which helps and hurts you. You're not going to draw the number one matchup. And I mean, you have a better quarterback. I mean, let's just call it how it is. Josh Allen is the better quarterback to Heineke.
Depends how you would quantify better.
Yeah, I'm just saying better is in fantasy points. And
if you're talking like better as in like how he plays football, perhaps, but better as far as, I don't know, maybe Taylor Heineke is quite the
he could be quite the cook for all I know.
Yeah. And nobody knows what that could bring to a team.
Exactly. Team morale, definitely, for sure. At the minimum, team morale and a full stomach.
Mm-hmm. Going to a game that you brought up here, Indy at Buffalo. Buffalo is just like awesome on defense. Number one versus the run and the pass in fantasy points allowed. There's two real weapons on this Colts team as far as guys are starting consistently, and that's Jonathan Taylor, the number one running back in fantasy football now.
Right.
And Michael Pittman. Are you like, I mean, it's impossible not to be worried by the matchup, but are you worried to the point where you're not playing these guys?
No, you played Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor has earned the right to be the number one back so far on the year. We'll see how he does the rest of the season. But as for right now, he has a well-deserved spot at being the number one back when carrying this Indianapolis Colts team to where they are. Pittman is someone who I'm okay with you not playing. He's in the same boat as Scary Terry. Like, Carolina's a tough D, Buffalo's tougher. Literally number one across the board. And I think I'm more comfortable with Pittman starting than Scary Terry, just because I think the Colts are gonna have to score. Like, I could see Carolina winning, 10-0, whereas I could see Buffalo being up 21-0, and they're just going to have to keep throwing the ball to try to get themselves back into the game. Where I think Pittman just gets, some garbage touches and really boosts his numbers that way. But I don't feel super confident with them this week.
Yeah, I think that is a close call. I originally just was leaning Terry. I think more just because of like it's Terry McLaurin, who's just like, I watch Michael Pittman a lot. I watch a lot of Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin is a better player at this point in his career. But I think I agree with you just because the Colts are going to need to score more points, where I'm not sure that Washington is going to be tossing the ball around as much. So I think I would rather go Pittman than Terry, which is just makes this a really sad day for me. I don't want to be saying that. Trust me.
I think
if there's anybody who's like, if there's anybody who that's heartbreaking to say that for, it is me. I've been a Terry guy all year, but I unfortunately am leaning that way. So I don't think I'm like sitting either of these guys, but you're kind of tempering expectations for both of them. On the Buffalo side of the ball, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I said that's why I was expecting some rebuttal on the Washington side, mainly because of your infatuation and highness for Scary Terry all year. That wasn't a shot. You just self-proclaimed it. I don't know how that can be a shot if you do it to yourself.
Well, I'm not bringing up all your misses, buddy.
I didn't say it was a miss. Scary Terry's had a decent year. I just said playing against Carolina when you have literally no other.
But this is a tough day. This is a tough day. You don't have to bring that up. You don't have to say.
It's a fantasy show. You want me to lie to the people? I'll lie to the people.
You don't have to lie. You just have to just not kick me while I'm down.
You ain't down. You're sitting in a chair.
Well, I'm not down as far as I can go.
Exactly.
No, we got to talk about the Buffalo.
Yeah, talk about Buffalo.
You're throwing me off. I'm trying to host a freaking show here, and you're trying to just make me feel bad about myself, and I don't like it.
You're looking awfully cute today, Kondo.
That doesn't help.
Oh, I hope you would.
Don't try to friggin' sweeten me, butter me up.
I'll butter you up, honey.
Stop. Buffalo running backs. They're both kind of crappy.
You were just aggressive now.
I'm on edge right now. You're starting Zach Moss in a pinch, but that's it for your Buffalo running backs, my opinion.
I mean, Indy is really good against the run this year. They're second. So I said I'm not starting any running back but Moss in like a case-by-case basis just because Moss will get that goal line work. And I think falling into the end zone for 6 points and, running it for 40 yards get you the double digits that you need. And I think that's what you're kind of hoping for. And especially since Indy should be down, you might get some garbage time numbers with Zach Moss too. But I'm not loving really any of the running backs this week.
Zach
No one
Moss or Alex Collins?
Zach Moss. I think Zach Moss is gonna fall into I think he's gonna fall in the end zone. I just think like it's either him or Josh Allen's gonna have 2 rushing touchdowns. Like I can see it.
Ramondre Stevenson or Zach Moss?
Zach Moss.
I think I'm with you on both, even though the Ramondre Stevenson one scares me. Detroit at Cleveland. Cleveland big favorites here. It's just going to be the run game. Nick Chubb is trending in the right direction. I don't think it matters as far as the success of the run game. It might matter as far as the success of your team. But as far as the run game goes, shouldn't make a difference in how effective they are. More of the question marks lie in whether we will see this Browns wide receiver core emerge or anybody within it. I made a proclamation earlier this week that if I was going to take a bet or gamble on one of these wide receivers being fantasy relevant, it was going to be Donovan Peoples-Jones because they spread the ball out so much. I would prefer the guy who sees the most valuable targets. And Donovan Peoples-Jones is looking like the number one guy as their downfield out wide option.
Right.
And he saw 5 targets last week in a tough matchup against a team that just he had to match up against a real deal number one corner. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that the expectations were too high in that situation. But in a situation against Detroit, I think that this could show that he is that guy that I think a lot of people are. I'd say like some people outside of me are banking on him being, which is not necessarily a guy you feel good about starting or not necessarily like a guy you need to play this week, but somebody who can have value going forward and be the number one receiver that you want in Cleveland.
I think I have to be with you on that one. Looking at the numbers, do you want to know who has the most targets on their team for their wide receiver?
Who?
OBJ has 34. Not playing on their team anymore. Also, there's a very long video of OBJ just being open. If anyone wants to watch that, it's pretty good.
They have some great music behind it too. It's very well made.
It is actually
almost really like a fine piece of cinema. Have you ever seen The Dark Knight? That's what I would compare it to, is The Dark Knight film or trilogy.
Right. So I'm with you there. I think that, DPJ's targets are more valuable than Jarvis's, but Jarvis has 34 targets on the year. Like through 10 games or whatever, however many games he ended up playing, he played. I guess he's only played 6 games fully, or at least got 6 games where he got targeted. I'm not loving it. Like, I'm not loving Jarvis, but I think DPJ you can make a argument for just because of, like you said, how valuable those touches are when you're 30 yards downfield and just trying to, moss someone for a tutty.
And he can do it. I mean, he's got the speed to do it. We've seen him just break big plays.
Insanely fast.
So on to the Detroit side of the ball, probably someone we didn't cover on Monday, but going into the week is important to talk about. TJ Hawkinson goose-egged last week. 1 target, I think, was maybe even more of the concerning part. A lot more
Right.
people are talking about his week than Gesicki's week, I think, because of that difference in targets. What are your rest of season expectations and maybe even this week expectations for TJ Hawkinson?
It's going to be tough this week. I mean, you're going into Cleveland and you have one other weapon on your team. It's a running back named by Swift. So it's going to be an easy game plan to kind of conjure up as far as defense is concerned with a defense that's already been good this year. Like the Cleveland defense, it's kind of fallen off a little bit, but they still have a pretty good defense in watching their games. So I think this week he might struggle a little bit. I definitely hope that he sees more than one target. I think he will. I think it was just a fluke last week that he saw one target. But he kind of has to. He's got to be targeted way more if they want to have a chance of scoring or even winning a game this year. I think he's gonna I think he's gonna be fine. Just it was a hiccup last week. That's all it was.
Yeah, it's terrifying if you have him, but you're still starting TJ Hawkinson. Like, it's hard not to go back to one of the very few tight ends with like a 15-point upside. There's not many guys who can get you that kind of point scoring from the dead position. And I think he is one of the guys. Now, the real hiccup here is the Jared Goff situation. We don't really know how that is going to play into this. He has not practiced yet this week. And there could be a chance that we do not see Jared Goff go. And Tim Boyle would be the option, it seems. He is on injured reserve as well. He is on injured reserve. I don't want to make it sound like Goff is. But he's taking reps in practice this week and is eligible to be activated for this week. I don't know that really changes too much, though. Like,
I think it might help Hawkinson a little bit more. It's going to help Swift. It's going to help Hawkinson. It might even help Williams if they give him Jefferson or Williams, I guess, really, depending on who they decide to put back there as number 2. It's going to be an interesting game to watch. I think it's going to tell us a little bit more moving forward, depending on the Jefferson-Williams split, to see who will be the backup to Swift.
Right. Going into Jacksonville, Duval for San Francisco at Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. San Francisco also questions at the running back position. Elijah Mitchell, questionable. He had finger surgery this week, and they say that there's a good chance that he plays. It's bold. It's wild. It's how the NFL works. Because we don't know how it works. And I think that just goes back to it works that way because, of course, it does, because we wouldn't expect it to. And it's all just a rotating thing of us being out of the loop and wrong. As well as many others, not just us. See, when I throw digs, it's at both of us. It's not even targeting at you. I think it's both of them. Anyway.
I think you're just taking, like, comments that you said as digs. Like, you said them, so I just, like, repeat it back at you.
I think
that's all it is.
But I think you're doing it with malicious intent.
I'm doing it so the audience gets an idea of what's going on, so they know all the story. They know the whole thing. You don't ever watch a movie halfway through. You don't start it halfway through.
You don't watch the OBJ clip halfway through.
No, you have to start at the beginning because it's just so good. Like, it's honestly 10 out of 10 recommend.
Defense has been kind of shocking. Third best in the league the last 3 weeks, and that has been against Indy, Buffalo, and a Russell Wilson-less Seattle team. We also have a San Francisco team that just had a monster offensive week. So really a clashing of these two teams that are trending in the right direction. I think you're starting whichever of the San Francisco running backs is the starter, whether that be Elijah Mitchell or Jeff Wilson. Don't bring up Trey Sermon's name in this show or in this landscape ever again. We don't need to hear about him. And that's nothing at Trey Sermon. That's just that's a tough call. That was a tough one, and we don't really need to make my day any worse. That was one of my big takeaways from this game. And then on the other side of the ball, Dan the man. You're starting Dan Arnold. Like, Dan Arnold is one of the safest tight ends in fantasy football. So he's going to get nothing this week, but you still have to start him.
Right. I'm a little worried for Mitchell just because of the finger surgery. One wrong hit, you're going to cough up the ball, potentially just get benched for it because I think it's going to be a close game, and I don't think you want to have any hiccups on either side. So I think there's little wiggle room for mess ups this game on both sides. But I'm with you, Dan the man, as consistent as they've come as of late. And I mean, San Francisco is top 10 in terms of points to the tight end. So I think there will be a little bit of regression, but I still think it's enough that if you start him, you're not going to be overly upset about it. And I'm with you. I think for Jacksonville, I was a little confused on who to start. I said Dan the man, and I said Robinson if healthy. Anyone else? Question mark.
No, unless you're in a really deep league, like I would say like 14 people, and you're starting like a Jamal Agnew. That's about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jamal Agnew is the only receiver worth rostering. We talked about that earlier in the week, just the explosive plays, but you're not feeling great about anybody else in Jacksonville, I would say. Are you starting Ayuk this week? I think is a good question to throw out there.
I think you can, just because how Jacksonville has been performing against the pass, or in terms of like points of wide receiver. I think you can. I think you can make an argument for it. I don't know if I think I'm doing it over any Chicago guy, probably over Bourne from New England. I don't know if I'm doing it over Sanders, just someone that we mentioned earlier in the show. But I think you can start him over some of these other guys that we've talked about.
I have a tough, gross decision to make at my wide receiver 2 spot in one league this week. So I'll throw this completely unbiased one or the other at you. Brandon Ayuk or Robbie Anderson?
Give me Robbie.
I honestly think I'm with you, which is very nasty. But if you said Brandon Ayuk, I would probably also say that it was
right. It's close. It's close. It's close, but I just gotta sling it.
It's just a tough decision. I don't think there's any real winner in it.
I have a question for you though, Kondo.
Oh, sure.
I already have my mind made up on what I'm doing with Deebo Samuel. Are you selling him? Just context for why I would sell him. He's losing targets to a rising Kittle and a rising Ayuk, losing those valuable touches that got him to where he was. And I think like he's a guy who needs a pretty nice volume to really, perform, like get you the 20-point weeks. Are you selling high on him while you still can for a guy who is going to get you, those 20-point games?
I mean, there's a couple things I want to cover here. One, I don't think he needs crazy volume. Like, you just his catches and his rushes from last week. He was 5 for 97 and a touchdown. Like, he can make explosive plays. Like, there's games in here where, I mean,
he also went 5 for 9 for 63 with no rushing. And so, like, without those touchdowns and without that rushing, he gets you those 10-point games. That's why I'm saying, should you sell high?
I think that's fine. Like, that's a fine off game for a wide receiver 1.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if he doesn't have a touchdown, he seems to not get you in the 30s. I mean, it's not duds, but I think you can find a guy who's
who does. Like, who are you trading him for? I guess would be the question.
I don't know. That was
like,
my question.
That was what
I
was going to follow it up with.
That was my question to you. I said, would you sell high on him?
I mean, yeah, I think that's kind of the question would be what you can get for Ayuk. Like, I don't think you're getting if you're trying to do it for a different wide receiver, then I don't think that I would. Like, maybe if you wanted to get like an AJ Brown and something else, I guess it depends on the deal on the table. I don't think he's untouchable, like a Cooper Kupp or something like that, or a Devontae Adams, where I'm probably holding him regardless, or Tyreek. I don't think he's in that top 3 tier. But if you wanted to tell me that Deebo Samuel, who is currently, I believe, the wide receiver 3 on the year,
he's wide receiver 3,
is your wide receiver for the rest of the season, I would not argue with it. I'm not as worried about Ayuk. I just like him as a player. He's an explosive player, and like he's a guy that I guess you could say like he needs targets, but like he's so good after the catch. If you watch him and just watch how he plays, like he's so fast and quick, and I think he can turn. He's one of those few players that can turn every play into a touchdown, and I like that a lot. It would be very hard for me to get rid of that.
Yeah, I just think I could find someone who could have a nice back of the season or like a lower end wide receiver 1 in some depth who is going to finish around the same spot just because I think Deebo's stock begins to fall. I mean, obviously he's not going to finish as wide receiver 3 rest of the season just based off how we've been talking, but I don't know. I think I might be wrong, could be wrong, but I'd rather be preventative, and if he does just start putting up like 10-point weeks, which is still good for a wide receiver, but not good for the wide receiver 1 where you could have got like a Mike Evans, a Marquise Goodwin, like some wide receiver 1s who have if you're telling me you can't get flip the
Marquise Goodwin was just a name that I did not expect to hear there. I think that was on accident.
I think I meant Marquise Brown, and then I said Marquise Goodwin because I said Mike Evans first. I was just thinking Tampa Bay, but Marquise Brown. Sorry.
But if you think Marquise Goodwin is a very good receiver, then I guess that just goes back to prove my Justin Fields take. So I'm fine with you saying
how's that prove Goodwin. I'm lost, but
Marquise Goodwin plays for the Bears. So I think it just goes back to prove how good that
can be. Oh my gosh, I was mixing everyone up. I meant Chris Godwin. I meant Marquise Brown, and then in my head I was thinking, I said Chris Godwin from Tampa Bay. We're over the hour mark. It's past my time of me, knowing my stuff at this point. You're just asking for.
Well, we're rounding it up, getting to the end here. I would not trade him for any of those people unless you're getting a big piece in return. I think he still continues to get more volume than Mike Evans. And I just trust him as a player more than I trust Hollywood personally. But if you need to I think that's where to round this conversation up, that's where I feel about Deebo. I don't think you're trading him for another guy that's going to outperform him. I think if you need depth, if you need a wide receiver and a running back instead of a top performing wide receiver, then now is the time you trade Deebo for a 2-for-1. I don't think you're trading Deebo straight up for any other wide receiver unless it's Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, or Cooper Kupp. Going into Green Bay at Minnesota. Big game for Toad here. Green Bay is top 3 in passing yards allowed. Obviously, this is a pretty big offense that relies on the passing game. They have 2 great weapons in Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. We have talked about a lot on this show. They weirdly have allowed the fifth. Wait, did I write this down right? Fifth most fantasy points to wide receivers.
No, fifth or
No,
less.
fifth least fantasy
Yeah,
points to opposing wide receivers. But I'm not sure that it affects either of these guys. Like you're still starting both of these guys,
I
and I
think it
think
affects. Yeah, I think it's going to affect Thielen a little bit more than Jefferson, just because we've already seen Thielen have that day where Justin Jefferson suffered and Adam Thielen took over. And I think it's going to be like the flip. I think Justin Jefferson is like, "Hey, Adam, I got you this time. Don't worry about it." And he goes out there, tosses the ball to their number one guy again, like he did against Keenan Allen. So that was always cool to see. But I mean, you also have Dalvin Cook out there to level some heads for you and keep you grounded with his ability to run the ball against any defense imaginable and be productive with it. So I definitely think it's going to be a fine day. You start all three of these guys, Cook, Jefferson, and Thielen, and you feel fine about it. I just expect a little bit of a bump from Thielen, but again, nothing that like makes him sittable by a long shot.
I agree. I'm actually feeling okay about both of these guys. Divisional games are always tough to predict. I feel like
Yeah.
it's just very random when you get into playing against a team in your own division. So I think that this could be more of an offensive game than we've seen recently, with the
Right.
Green Bay defense being pretty stifling. Flip side, obviously, A.J. Dillon. I think he's as good of a play as pretty much anybody like this week. I think he's right in that RB1 consideration, right in that top 10 mix. I have a feeling you are going to be lower on that.
I think top 10's a little strong. Um, but again, it's Minnesota. We haven't looked fantastic on the defensive side of the ball. So I don't like blame you for that, but I definitely don't like I'm not expecting AJ Dillon to drop another 20 bomb and be inside the top 10 again. With some of the matchups that people are going to have this week, I think that you can find people who are going to be outperforming him a little bit more skeptical. But again, Devontae Adams, Alan Lazard, both dealing with a shoulder injury, and Aaron Rodgers did not practice with his toe injury. So there could be a heavy lean on the run, which is why I'm like not hating on it too much. Because if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have two wide receivers out there. What are you going to do besides just hand the ball off the entire game? So I think I definitely see the chances and the possibilities of him just getting a bunch of garbage touches and racking up a nice day for you. And I think that's what you're looking for in fantasy football is just someone who's going to get you some garbage touches and make the most out of them.
We don't need to denounce it by calling them garbage touches. We can just call them touches, man.
It's not all touches are the same.
You're discounting AJ Dillon.
No, you talked about this earlier. You literally said that someone got garbage.
Well, I said it with Wayne Gallman when they were down 43-3. Do you think Green Bay is going to be trailing or up big in this game? Do you think it's going to be?
I think they're going to be down, but they're just not going to be able to throw. I'm just saying, I see the world where Aaron Rodgers doesn't play. Devontae Adams is limited. Alan Lazard is limited. I don't think Randall Cobb is going to be the guy to carry them. I could see Minnesota taking the game. I could see Minnesota with their weapons that we have taking the game and them just being like, all right, just like they were in week 1, we're not going to do anything. Just run the ball, bury the clock.
Okay. So you don't see Aaron Rodgers play. Aaron Rodgers has come out this week and said, I'm playing. But
I said if he doesn't play, that's what I'm seeing. That's literally what I said.
If he does, what if he plays and he does play?
If Aaron Rodgers plays, then I'm pretty sure Devontae Adams is going to go off for just a monster game, and A.J. Dillon is going to get obviously 10 to 15 touches on the ground and maybe a couple passes through the air. I just don't see him getting 100 yards on the ground in those 15 touches, and I don't see him getting 30-yard give me catches out the backfield. So I think he's going to have to get some garbage time touches or, just no time left on the clock, just a little pass down to the running back and let him just run it for 30 yards. If you want my opinion, that's what I think. I think he's in for a fine week, and you definitely start A.J. Dillon. I just think that Aaron Jones is the superior running back there, and he's had down weeks. So I think it's fair to assume that a guy who is not the running back one on his own team can have a down week against a team, especially with some bigger name weapons on your roster, banged up and or limited on a Thursday.
I think he has as good of a chance to have a monster week as last week. I would say. I mean, nobody really gets consistent 20-point weeks unless your name's Christian McCaffrey. So
Right.
I think that's pretty tough to predict that from my end, but I think he's as good of a play as anyone, and it has to be some pretty good circumstances for you to not be playing him. I don't
But
think
Seattle is the back half, actually back third. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're sixth in terms of allowing the most yards on the ground. I think that kind of played a little bit of a part into it. He didn't run over efficiently with 21 carries, 66 yards. He got the 2 touchdowns that really helped him. And obviously, he got those 2 passes for 62 yards, which is why I'm saying I don't think he is going to get that unless it's in some garbage time. I think Minnesota's team they're really good at letting people catch the ball, but they're pretty good about getting to them shortly after. And I don't think that these 30-yard bombs that they turned out to be are going to happen. And that's why I'm just lower on Dillon. I still think you start him. You start him over almost every other guy we talked about today, not, a clear-cut starter. But I'm preparing myself for a down week. I mean, it just happens to be this week, I think.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm not.
Even
I would
Aaron.
put it in the words down week, in my opinion.
Aaron Jones. Yeah, Aaron Jones playing Washington got you underneath 10 points. Aaron Jones is the better running back, which we both just agreed to. Better running back.
We've all agreed that he's the starting running back. Yes.
And
I don't think he's that much better than A.J. Dillon. I think A.J. Dillon is a rare running back. I think he's very good.
Also against Kansas City, a team that
I'm not talking about that, though. I don't
right, but I'm just saying,
I think that those things can have guys can have bad games against teams that you wouldn't expect them to have bad games against.
Right.
I think A.J. Dillon is a better runner on early downs than Aaron Jones. I think that he's just built for that better. And can kind of grind out yards. I wouldn't be surprised if that's a little bit of the strategy here with Green Bay to try to limit the Minnesota offense. And wear on the defense. So I mean, we can't keep talking about A.J. Dillon because we're talking way too long about someone that we both agree is starting in all lineups. But I mean, I expect an RB1 level day from him. He has RB1 level opportunity to the point where I can't see you starting 12 backs over him.
I can't list 23 guys or 24 guys I'm starting over him. I'm just tampering my expectations and preparing myself for a down week is all I'm saying. Just like last week, Cordell Patterson, who was the number 5 running back or whatever he was, put up a 4-point dud. Is what it is. And I think you just have to prepare yourself. I'm just saying that there's a lot of things that could lead to a tougher game, but I'm with you. They could just try to run the ball to keep Minnesota off the field. And if that happens, then A.J. Dillon's in for a great game of 38 carries for 57 yards and 3 touchdowns. So, startable.
Baltimore at Chicago.
How many games are you doing today? Holy cow.
Round this thing up. Baltimore allowing the 10th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. We kind of talked about this earlier. Last in passing yards allowing, I think it's over 280 passing yards per game.
Wait, sorry, which team?
Baltimore.
I'm looking.
They are.
Saying the least or most?
They're allowing the most.
Yes.
Last in passing yards allowed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've talked about this. I think that Fields is a very intriguing kind of streaming quarterback this week. And if Mooney is to play, I also think that he is a interesting, good flex option with a high upside here, especially Allen Robinson might be. So I am expecting a very strong rebuttal. We don't need to talk about it that much, though, if you just want to tell me why I'm wrong real quick, and then we'll go on.
Yeah, I mean, I just said I'm starting Montgomery. Robinson, Mooney are both questionable. And if the quarterback has no one to throw the ball to, it's not going to be a good day for him. So I said Montgomery's the only one I'm starting with any real confidence. But again, your league, your choices. If you have high hopes for Mooney and Robinson to play, then start Justin Fields if you are streaming quarterbacks. Not someone I'm going to recommend. I think you can find better guys. But if you're going to pick a Chicago running or quarterback to start, Justin Fields would be the best Chicago running or quarterback to start this week.
Also, we did find out on the show that he does have one of the top wide receivers in fantasy football in Marquise Goodwin, which does help the argument that he doesn't need any of those other guys.
Marquise
on the other
Goodwin
side of the ball, Latavius Murray looks to be coming back into the fold. Le'Veon Bell released. I don't know if that's news that we have to talk about. I don't think so. But Latavius Murray being back means stay away. Just don't start any of these guys. Let this situation play out and try to be as far away from it as possible. If you could get maybe a temporary restraining order against the Baltimore backfield, I would do that because I don't want to be close to it.
Yeah, so I said I'm starting Lamar, Brown, and Andrews, and those are the only people that I'm starting. And I'm not starting I'm starting Andrews with confidence just because he always gets those easy gimme shutdowns. Starting Brown because he's the only wide receiver out there that I think is going to have a viable fantasy season. And I'm starting Lamar because they have just a plethora of running backs in the backfield. And I think that with all that confusion, he can just snag the ball from one of them and run it for 30 yards like he is capable of doing.
Yeah, I think that Bateman is worth consideration at flex. We talked about this earlier in the week, so I don't want to harp on it too much, but he's seen a good target share for rookie, just kind of working his way in the first 4 weeks that he's been out there, seen 6 targets in every game and has double digits in his last 3. So don't mind him as a flex option depending on your options either. Going into questions, if I'm still connected here.
You are like breaking up. So you were frozen that entire time you talked.
Could you hear me?
I could hear you. So I didn't want to interrupt you because I felt like if I interrupted you, then the whole thing would shut down.
Fair enough. That's all that matters. If anybody else couldn't hear me, well, then I guess they're going to have to miss that chance to start Rashad Bateman.
Exactly.
Mike Williams for T. Higgins. I would not do that. I am holding out hope for Mike Williams. I just think the upside is higher with Mike Williams. Obviously, depends what you're looking for, I would say. I choose the right to reserve my hope for Mike Williams to have some of those like big weeks again because we've seen what the offense has looked like without it, and it hasn't been good. So I'm leaning Mike Williams, but if you need safety and you need floor, T. Higgins is undoubtedly the better option there.
Yeah, Mike Williams. If you're looking for a guy to leave in your lineup week in and week out, I think I'm going to go with T. Higgins just because Mike Williams will put up 3-point duds for you. I don't think that's what you want from your wide receiver 2 position or wide receiver 1, depending on what your team looks like.
Do I start Jared Goff on Thanksgiving because big dogs eat?
Amen.
I think it depends on whether you consider Jared Goff a big dog. Cody is a big dog.
Yeah.
We've
They're big
talked
dogs.
about made a couple appearances on the show. I'm trying to think of other big dogs in the league. I feel like there must be like obviously the Cleveland Browns dog, the dog Pound. I'd just say that's pretty safe.
Mhm.
Big dog in the NFL.
I'm thinking Carolina Panthers, just Cam Newton. Panthers are cats, but cats and dogs both have 4 legs, both have a tail. Could be the same thing.
Well, I think there's some cats that can have a dog mentality, and like
Exactly.
I don't know if that's a panther, but I guess it again depends on your interpretation.
Yeah.
Do I win? I got Ryan Tannehill, James Robinson, AJ Dillon, Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, Pitts, Waddle, Browns D, Greg the Leg. I am playing Kyler, Connor, Eckler, Diggs, Terry, Minnesota tight end, Tyler Conklin, Sterling, Shepard, Ravens D, and Daniel Carlson.
I think
so.
I think so. It's tough. I think he beats you at quarterback, potentially beating you at running back too, with James Conner performing well.
Obviously beating you at tight end.
Tight end, obviously, you're losing, brother. Hate to break it to you. You're winning at wide receiver with Hill and Justin Jefferson.
And
Defense, I think you made the good choice. Browns have an easy matchup this week. Browns D should be looking good. Yeah, it's gonna be tough. I think you win though.
Score prediction for tonight.
I'll let you go first. What's the over under? Can you pull that up? No, I think you have it.
So, yes, I can.
Thank you.
47 points. I mean, New England's been putting up monster performances here. So, let's think about this for a second. Part of me wants to predict correctly, and part of me wants to predict for the game that I want to see. But I also know from personal experience, the Atlanta Falcons are not involved in many games that I want to see, unfortunately. And again, I did say that earlier in the season they were the worst team in the NFL by far.
You did.
And I'm hoping that statement led them to win some games. So I'm hoping that my statement of them not being in many games that I like to see will encourage them in a positive way to make this a game that I want to see. And because of that, I am going to go 27-23 New England.
That's a nice one. I'm going to go a little bit lower. I'm going to go 24-14 New England.
Both have New England winning.
Right.
Falcons, prove us wrong.
Exactly.
Marquise Goodwin or Cooper Kupp, rest of career.
Goodwin. All day, baby.
We need to get the ages, and I'd probably have to do a little bit more tape study to be able to figure that one out. But I'm leaning Goodwin as well. Need one flex for this week. Fields, Cam, Ryan T. Tua, or Jimmy G. I'm going with probably Tua.
Yeah, it's either Tua or Cam for me, but I'm leaning more Tua if Tua is healthy. Tua over Cam.
Who is more elite, Joe Flacco or Mike White? Joe Flacco, I think the question around Joe Flacco has been around for too long to dismiss how elite he is just because of 1 week performance, 1.5 week performance from Mike White. So I'm going to lean Joe Flacco until Mike White can keep the conversation going. Not that Mike White can never be more elite than Joe Flacco, but obviously it's a pretty tough feat that I don't think can be conquered in only a week and a half. It's a year-long journey that many fail to take the trip on.
Right. I'm going to go Joe Flacco too, just because Joe Flacco has yet to miss a pass this year. That sort of eliteness doesn't come around very often, if not ever before, until today. So, Joe Flacco.
Okay. Dynasty. Michael Carter. I don't know. Is that Damian Harris?
I think it's Damian Harris.
and a 2023 third pick for Zeke and a 2022 second pick.
I think the team getting Zeke is winning that trade. Actually, no, sorry, rephrase that.
Nah.
I think the team getting rid of Zeke is winning that trade. Sorry, my bad.
I agree.
Getting Carter and Harris. I think that's a way better option. Zeke is still a very good running back, but I think his years are more counted than Carter and Harris.
I agree. I think kind of the same thing. We've seen a little bit of a Zeke decline. That he's just getting like up there in age. And I think that's going to come to a point with Cowboys soon where they're going to have to make a decision on him probably with how well Pollard's playing.
Pollard's an elite.
I would go for the certainty in Carter and Harris.
Right.
Because Carter's going to stay in New York for the time being, in the near future.
Right.
That is it for us today. Hour 31, better than 2 hours, which I think we had earlier this week. Thank you all for watching and supporting. Last question. Who is draft pick number 1 next year?
Cooper Kupp.
Right now. I'm probably going Derrick Henry still.
Cooper Kupp, baby. Cooper Kupp.
Interesting. In PPR leagues, it's going to be I don't think it's out of the question. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see as that goes. I'm sure that opinion will change 10,000 times before we get to next year. But as of right now, that is our choices. So, that is it for us today. We will be back tomorrow with the 4:00 and beyond games. And yeah, have a good Thursday night football game.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully what you need to happen happens and our predictions come true. I don't know if there's a chance that both of our predictions can come true, but I hope that does happen just for the unity of the show.
We won't be able to see them until Tuesday.
No, I meant for the score predictions.
Oh, yeah, I don't know how that's going to happen. But if New England wins, I guess it counts as a win for both of us. So
there's a will. If there's a will, there is a way.
Amen.
And I'm not sure if there's a will on either of these rosters, but I'm sure if there is, then there is a way that it will happen. Last question. Is there a Thanksgiving Day show? We have no idea. If you think we have thought that far ahead, you are out of your mind.
You are on something.
We are done.
We are
See
done
y'all tomorrow.